Welcome, everyone. I'm Inna Horvat, a product marketing manager at Panopto, and I'm thrilled to have you joined us today for AI as a thought partner, designing video learning content that changes work. While we give it a minute or two for everyone to join, just a quick housekeeping rules. So if you have any questions during the session, feel free to drop them in the Q&A panel here in Zoom. We'll have a dedicated Q&A time at the end. Also, this webinar is being recorded and we'll send out the replay right after the event. Today, we are exploring something that I think is on every L&D professional's mind right now. How do we use AI not just as a shortcut, but also as a genuine thought partner? How do we design video learning content that actually changes the way people work? Before we dive in, quick note, our colleague Jason Sexsmith, Senior Lead for Commercial Excellence at Landbeck, was originally joining us today to share some fantastic real-world experience, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it. So I'll be covering his portion of the content, and I'll be drawing on some of the insights and the data that he prepared with us. And as for me, I work at Panopto at the intersection of our core video platform and Elai, our AI video generation tool. My background is in learning design, and I spent over a decade as an L&D practitioner before moving into product. So this topic is genuinely as close to my heart as it's possible. Now, joining me today is Manuel Garcia, Director of Operations at Global Links, who brings deep hands-on expertise in AI-enabled learning programs. Manuel, thank you so much for being here. I know that our audience is really going to benefit from your experience. Do you want to go ahead and tell us a bit more about your background?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian, and thank you very much for the invitation to the Panopto team overall. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Manuel Garcia. I currently work as the Director of Operations at Global Links. At Global Links, we do IT consulting. We help IT organizations adopt best practices for the management of an IT organization. And a lot of what we're currently doing there is helping IT organizations develop the capabilities they need to adopt AI technologies and tools as they are coming out in the market. I have over 16 years of experience in the learning side because we also provide technical certification training for the organizations that are adopting the frameworks. We also provide training along cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, information security, other IT disciplines. So my focus at the organization has been on the training side. So I have been managing the training department for a while. I'm currently leading the team that is developing the new content. We're using a lot of AI tools to generate all of that. So we'll get into that in the conversation. So thank you very much, Ina.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't be more excited for this conversation. I know that we've got a lot to cover. So without further ado, let's go ahead and have a quick look at our agenda, right? So first, we'll take a look at the real state of AI enablement in enterprise L&D. Some of the data might surprise you. Now, second, we'll go deeper on AI as a thought partner, what that actually means in practice, and how you shift from using AI as a task shortcut to using it as a genuine creative and strategic collaborator. Third, we'll get into a very practical side. So how Elai helps you build AI-generated video content that's fast, scalable, and genuinely effective. And finally, we'll open up for a Q&A session. So have your questions ready. Now, there are audience polls throughout the session, so please feel free to participate. Your input truly shapes the conversation. So let's get started with the first one. Right now, let me just hit the first poll. So it would mean a lot for us if you shared where is your organization in its AI enablement learning journey. How do you feel about the work that has been done and is already being prepared to prepare for the future of AI and what's coming, because there is a lot of buzz, a lot of noise around this topic. So we'd be really happy to see what about our audience. So how do you feel? All right, I see that half of you have already voted. You don't see the results yet, but these are quite surprising. I might keep an intrigue. Manuel, what do you think? Is everyone going to be on the same page here?
I don't know. I think that everybody is talking about AI, and I think that it's the minority only of organizations in the world that are not using or at least talking about AI. So I'm sure that we all gotta be there. We compare the introduction of AI or the adoption of AI to what computing was in the late 90s, when all the typing machines were replaced by computers. We're exactly at that same uh, state, if you will, in the evolution of organizations. So I'm sure that everybody has at least considered AI.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, it's always either we are very anti-AI or we are very pro-AI. So there is no neutral ground. But that's not the case right now, because if you could take a look at the results right now, you can see that the results are very diverse. So you have somewhat confident, neutral or unsure, somewhat unconfident prevailing, which is very interesting. That means that a lot of you have questions, that a lot of you are on the journey. And we are very excited to hopefully help you with this journey. Okay, so moving on, we've got some really interesting stats for you to share with. So numbers are stark, am I right? So AI adoption has nearly doubled from 55% to 78% of organizations in the past year all alone. The training is nowhere near keeping up, right? You can see here that 39% of employees receive any AI training. And even then, only 12% get enough training to actually improve their productivity at work. So we have a massive gap between organizations saying we use AI and employees actually being equipped to use it well. And the biggest blocker is not technology, it's the people side of things. For instance, 45% of the CEOs say that employee resistance is their number one challenge. Fear, low confidence, unclear expectations, all these things, and not the tool availability are what's holding organizations back. So organizations seeing the fastest AI ROI have one thing in common. They put L&D and educational initiatives in charge of enablement, not just give the licenses, not just provide access to tools. So not disconnected top-down mandates, right? So education, enablement-led. Manuel, from your experience, is this surprising for you? What are your thoughts on this?
These are very interesting data, and I think everything makes a lot of sense. And I think that the reason for this data being the actual data that organizations have gathered throughout these years that AI has been adopted is mostly based on how we have been sold to AI or how AI has been sold to us. The expectation and the paradigm that is around AI. We have been told that AI is going to replace roles, that it's going to replace people, that our job is going to be replaced by AI. And this gives us the idea that AI can do everything, right? And it reminds me of the Terminator movies, like we think of AI as a robot that is going to be independent. Of course, it's capable of doing something like that, but it's not right there, at least yet. And the thing with AI is that we're afraid of it because we think it's gonna replace or do what we're currently doing. And I'm gonna share my experience here with the team when we adopted AI content development about that was December 2024. So it's over a little bit over a year that we have been working with AI. When we first started exploring AI, we identified, before identifying the capabilities of AI, we came up with the challenges and the restrictions that AI had. And we said, how are we going to solve these challenges? Because AI can help us up to this point, but not beyond that. So what do we do then? So we said, okay, let's define a workflow where our graphic designers provide additional input to the AI or define like the strategic perspective of how the course is going to look like, because we create e-learning content using AI tools. And we said our designers are going to do this, and AI is going to come in this place in the workflow. And we drew like the whole workflow involving people and AI. When we presented that to the graphic designers, we came up with a reality that I'm sure a lot of organizations are facing, and that was they were reluctant to adopt AI tools because they felt like their talent as graphic designers was being minimized by the organization. They were like, but why do I need to use an AI tool if I typically use the Adobe suite to create the colors and the design of things? And we were like, no, hold on. You're still gonna do that. but you will use this tool that is going to help you develop content much faster instead of letting AI to do everything. So it really took us some time to change the mindset of individuals, and I'm going to touch a little bit more on the mindset that is required to adopt AI tools in later in the presentation. But I think that the problem here was people have a different expectation of AI versus the reality of what AI can really accomplish. And it's really a mix of human talent with AI enablement that gives you the full capability to do something. I think that's the reason behind this data here.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I loved your example on the graphic design. I feel that this is one of the areas in general, everything that comes with Gen AI that we will cover a little bit later. It's kind of now being questioned. What is going to be substituted by AI? Where is my place at work? And I feel that a lot of us have this fear, this challenge. And I love your thought of combining both human expertise and AI to speed things up. But with that, we have another block that I would love to hear more on your perspective. So what has actually worked? How do you enable people, making them feel confident in their AI capabilities and at the same time feeling secure about their job, about what they are doing within the organization?
Absolutely, and I can continue the story of what happened after the design team finally understood what AI was capable of doing. It was an interesting transition. And talking about the first question here, what approaches have worked best for turning a learning strategy into real employee readiness? They were reluctant to adopt AI at the beginning. So we were very clear with them and we told them, and to be honest, at the beginning, I thought that the AI was going to do more than what it's currently doing. I thought that indeed the designers were going to be replaced at least at 50% of their talent. But once they started exploring the AI tool, and once they came up with the restrictions or the constraints that the AI tool presented, they were able to change the way they were providing value to the workflow of content creation. With traditional tools, the designer has to put a lot of effort into working with assets, with the graphic assets, right? And with AI, since you can replace some of those tasks with automation with AI tools, then the role of the designer evolves, and that's what happened with our team. The role evolved, and they became more like orchestrators, more like a cinema director, if you will, that can now define the scene or the different content that they were creating, because we create videos, a lot of videos, so we divide everything into scenes. So they kind of orchestrate the scenes, and the fact that they are no longer required to spend hours managing assets, because AI helps us with that, has allowed them to provide more value in more, I would say, strategic activities, and they acquired a different perspective that had to do a lot with the mindset. So I think that the team evolved into a different role that is now orchestrating the work versus just executing it, and AI is executing most of it. So the approach that worked for us was making people familiar with the tools, removing this blame culture, like no, you cannot fail, you can do this. No, we enabled like an experimentation workflow for them, and we gave them time to fail, and we were flexible with failure. That's very important, because you get a fail when you're gonna learn to do something new. So you
I
get to
love that.
redefine the things that you're doing. So you're gonna fail there. So people need to feel safe when failing. And once they feel comfortable with the tool, it's like the adoption curve, the change adoption curve. I don't know if you've ever seen like this chart that is a curve that people get shocked when there is something that is changing, and then they get demotivated. And once they start exploring the tool again, their motivation goes up again. Precisely that happened here with us. So I can tell you that once people spend time identifying the tool constraints, once people understand what are the tool capabilities as well, they are able to redefine the role. And I mean, we're working with talented people, we're working with professional people, so they know how to do their work. We got to trust them as well. If they feel that environment is good for them to propose new ways of working, they're going to come up with a new proposal of doing things, And moving forward in the presentation, and I'm going to talk about the outcome that we have accomplished with this. Heads up, we have increased productivity 500% from our design team. And that's incredible. We didn't expect that. We were aiming for 200%. Now we're getting 500% with this. So, and about the second question, where have we seen the biggest gap between AI hype and on the ground reality? It's precisely what I was mentioning. The expectation and the paradigm that we have from AI is that it's going to do everything and that it's going to replace everything. The reality is that no, tools are still, I'm not going to say mature, but they are designed to work with human guidance. You cannot rely on an AI tool to do everything. I mean, you can work with ChatGPT, and a lot of people treat GPT as if it was Google, and they just ask things to ChatGPT, expecting that ChatGPT creates everything. Of course, it has the capability of doing it, but it's going to be just something very random. We gotta use human talent and evolve our mindset into something more strategic that defines what we want to accomplish. And then we use AI to execute what we defined on the human side with the human team.
First of all, 500%. Love that. Second of all, your part about letting people make mistakes is brilliant, is absolutely brilliant. This is how we learn in a nutshell. And we'll talk about learning and enablement, self-directed learning a little bit later. But for now, let's talk about challenges, right? So I'm going to launch one more poll. Please feel free to share anything that comes up to your mind. So right now, what is your biggest AI adoption challenge? So you have here lack of internal AI expertise or knowledge, not finding the right tools, cultural resistance to AI. Maybe it's data and governance concerns. And actually, usually this is the top challenge that we are facing with right now. Then we've got lastly, lack of clarity on how to integrate AI. So some of you have already answered. We are aiming to go into 50%. Just give it
let me interrupt for a minute here, a reflection about these questions here, or these possible answers. The data governance concerns, I think that's something that applies a lot to financial institutions that are trying to integrate AI into their workflows. But I believe most of the audience here is in learn and development. We have an advantage in learning and development that we don't have as many constraints as other areas in the organization, or as other industries. We have the capability of exploring, of creating things. We are the creative motion of the company, right? So I think that's an advantage that we have, and that opens the opportunity to adopt more AI tools.
That's right. Absolutely. And it's also very interesting how the scale is diversified right now. So on one hand, we've got some organizations that I personally had a couple of conversations with, people saying that we are not allowed to use any kind of AI tools in large organization, manufacturing ones, because of the internal processes. And on the other hand, I've had once an interview with the head of L&D in Raiffeisen Bank, and she mentioned, well, if we are not implementing AI yesterday, we lost tomorrow to all the other banks, because well, this is something that we have to do. It's not even a question if we can, right? So it's really interesting how the scale is changing right now. But for now, let's take a look. What is the biggest challenge of our audience? So data is not the first one, as I predicted, but it's a lack of internal AI expertise and knowledge. And what it tells us is that internally, organizations are still not investing enough, or not providing enough support, just as Manuel talked about. And there is a very interesting quote. Unfortunately, I forgot the name, but it was at the AI forum, that for every dollar you spend at AI innovation, spend 5 on internal education on how to actually use AI. I find myself a big fan of this thought. So yeah, Manuel, what are your thoughts?
Lack of internal expertise knowledge. Okay, very interesting. Well, the first thing that I can tell the audience, and I would encourage you to do this, is don't be afraid of the tools, explore them. Because most of the tools that we use in AI, especially as I mentioned before, we're not talking about financial data here that we're going to disclose customer information. I mean, like the tools that we use for content development are just creative, right? You don't have to share critical information to the tool, so there's no risk there. So I understand that there's a lot of ambiguity on what are the tools that are available and what do they do and how to use them. Uh, One thing that I can encourage people to do is don't be afraid of the tool. Play with it. Learn to work with it because they are very intuitive. And the teams like Panopto or the Elai team, they are very friendly in helping people and enabling people to work with the tool. So if you approach them, they're going to give you a demo and then they're going to enable like an environment where you can play with the tool. Really, don't be afraid of doing it because that's how we started. We started exploring ChatGPT initially, and we identified some constraints that it had, as I mentioned before. So we started exploring other models that are publicly available. For content generation, for GenAI, we use Claude. That is the one that has delivered the best outcome for what we do. And then we take the content that Claude generates, of course, with all the controls and governance and guidance that we put around our strategy for content development. And then we use other tools to create or produce the content that we ultimately use for e-learning courses, right? So I can tell you that all this process took us probably from 3 to 4 months to explore all the tools and get familiar and be comfortable with the tools that we were going to use for this new process. And once the core team who enabled this adoption within Global Links became familiar with these tools, it was really fast and easy for the designers to adopt these tools. It was more an emotional change or an emotional hoop that they had to go through, as I described before. But the technical side, it was very easy for them to learn how to use the tool. What we did, I remember, we asked them to meet at the office because everybody works remotely, but we have an office in Mexico City. And we asked them to meet at the office and do a 2-day workshop where they would play with the tool. And we invited lunch at the office for them to be playing with the tool. And in just 2 days, they were comfortable enough to start making proposals on how they were going to use the tool. So really, my invitation is don't be afraid of the tool. Not finding the right tools for those people who are struggling with that. Well, there are a lot of providers out there. Panopto is a great partner that can provide many options. And I can tell you, out of the discovery that we did, which took us probably a couple of months before selecting the tools, we identified Panopto as the most capable in its niche. So I can really recommend Panopto because they do have very strong capabilities and much better features than other competitors. So the invitation is there. Don't be afraid of it.
Thank you so much, Manuel. It really means the world. I mean, this coming from an expert such as you, I have no words. So moving on, we have a couple of more information to share with you. So you've heard us saying AI is a thought partner a lot, but what does it actually mean? The default sort of use of AI is autocomplete. Write me a course outline. Create a post. It works, but it also keeps you in the shallow end, and also your competitors are doing exactly the same thing. So how are you differentiated from the others? Because everyone can click simplest prompt and ask ChatGPT to write a blog post or something like that. Now, there is no learning component in that. There is a very big difference between write a performance review for me and ask me the questions that would help me to write the best performance review. That actually starts to make me think and learn and be better as a professional, right? Sort of like a personal automated tutor that has access to internet and all these possible sorts of knowledges. The real shift is treating AI as a co-thinker, a challenger, a brainstormer, and not a ghostwriter. So there are some practical modes to introduce to your teams. It could be curriculum ideation, and don't start with a prompt, but start with a question. My audience struggles with X. Help me find the right entry point. And AI helps you to explore the problem before jumping into the solutions. Another fantastic example is Claude, just as Manuel mentioned. We are going to talk about AI ideation, GenAI a little bit later in our agenda. But for now, as you can see here on the slide, we also got scenario and story design. branching scenarios, all these beautiful sorts of things to enable scenario-based learning. We learn through stories. There is no doubt in that. So when you use these scenarios to stress test your examples that you provide to LLM, right? Lastly, objective critique. This one is underused. Give AI your learning objectives and say, tear these apart. Are they measurable? Are they the right level? And you get a critical thinking partner, not just a yes machine. Because let's be honest, ChatGPT is very nice. When you ask them to do something, the reply would mostly say, fantastic idea. This is brilliant. You're so smart. And that's also a trap that you shouldn't get into as a professional. So key here, AI is an autocomplete, is a very big shortcut, and AI is a challenger. Argue against my approach. What would a critic say? That is a thinking accelerator. There is a very interesting statistics that 95% of AI pilots fail. And AI burst bubble is something, is another side of the coin, because we can be very inspired with what can be done with AI. But the reality is that a lot of pilots also fail. So not because technology works, but because organizations skip the hard friction of genuine behavior change. Manuel, what are your thoughts? Have you faced with this kind of concept that even though the technology is there, it's great, but somehow it fails?
Yes, absolutely. And while you were mentioning that, I was thinking of all the cases, all the times when I have told my customers on the consulting side, and this is not only applicable to AI, but to any tool that is used, especially in the IT industry. I always tell them, tools do not manage. Do not expect your tool to manage your process. And do not expect AI to solve everything for you. You will still need to have a workflow. Actually, I can share my personal experience with Global Inks. Now that we have an AI-enabled workflow, the controls in the workflow and the management of that workflow had to be more robust. We had to include more metrics. We had to include more visibility on how the work is flowing, because now we're developing content 5 times faster. So it's very easy to get lost in that process, in that content development flow. And having a team of 8 people involved in creating a single lesson, for example, or a single course, it's very challenging for them to coordinate and match everybody else's work. So what we did was we had to implement a full management layer that adapts to the flow that we defined with AI. And only then we were able to accomplish the pace that we wanted, because it was very easy to get sprints. With AI, you create something very fast, but then the next stage on the process was stopped because nobody knew that the output was already ready for them to take over. So those were the challenges that we had to complement, I would say, or compensate. And the tools have not helped us with management. Do not expect AI to help you manage. If you don't have a solid management layer on top of your AI automation or AI-enabled workflow, it's going to fail. And I think, well, from the IT consulting perspective, the initiatives that related to AI adoption that have failed, that has happened because AI, the use of AI that the organization is giving to the tools they are adopting is not aligned with the strategy of the organization. As long as the organization has a strategy that comfortably has place for the adoption of AI, and it's very clear how AI is going to be used and what outcomes you expect from the use of AI, it's going to help. It's going to be of benefit for the organization. But most AI initiatives are being created from operational departments. It's instead of being a top-down approach, it's been a bottom-up approach. Operational teams adopt an AI tool, they automate something they're doing, and they're expecting that to impact the organization. And the organization is like, wait, no, I'm not going in this direction. I'm going in this direction. I don't want to save time in creating content. I'm wanting to save time or save money on the costs that we have in the organization, as an example. So if there is no alignment between the operational tasks that are being enabled by AI with the strategy of the organization, it's going to fail. There needs to be an alignment. For us, it was very clear because, or the use case of AI in content development, because the strategy of the organization was we need to expand our portfolio. We're at that stage as an organization. We need to expand our training portfolio. So in that case, the strategy directly influences and impacts, and I would say even challenges the adoption of AI because we gotta go faster and faster every time because the strategy is dictating that. So that is very, very important to happen in the organization.
I love that. There has been also quite a concerning statistic that I think roughly 50% of employees use AI in secret. So this is already happening. And that's kind of correlates with what you are talking about, Manuel, the top-down approach. Once I've had the great podcast with Joytika Pruthi. She works at Coursera. She's an L&D lead. And she shared that the moment AI started, the whole AI buzz started, their CEO created a Slack channel where he encouraged everyone, the whole company, to experiment. And he was sharing weekly his own experiments and results and sort of peer-to-peer learning. What he did, he was one of the first ones to call AI as his thought partner. And that enabled the whole organization to move together without the secrecy, without the fear of mistakes that Manuel has also talked about. So there you have it. AI is a thought partner. And we are closing this topic with another poll. Now, this one is very focused on GenAI. So ever since AI has started to progress, GenAI has probably been one of the top use cases. Right now, it has shaped into something exciting and interesting, but also dangerous if misused. So we are curious how, just a second. Okay, there you have it. Now the poll is live. So how often do you use GenAI for ideation?
But what you mentioned in about these people using AI in secrecy, I think there's still some like AI taboo outside, right? Like a lot of organizations are thinking that it's bad and that you're cheating if you're using AI, and that happened to us even in the on the software development department, for example. One of our developers led he was the instructor for a course, and the people asked him, "What do you think about using AI for coding?" And he was like, "Oh no, you cannot do that because it's like cheating." And he was like, "Why did you tell them that? Of course we want you to use AI because you're gonna increase your productivity. You know, so there has to be the sponsorship from the top management of the organization for people to be confident with the use of AI. That's very, very important. If there's no sponsorship in the organization, it's gonna be very challenging to adopt it."
Yeah, totally agree. And the results of the poll are that most of you use a few times a week, which is quite expected result, I would say. But it makes us wonder how important is this topic still. And that's why, Manuel, I would love to hear your perspective on what has been the most unexpected use that you found for AI as a thought partner for in terms of the ideation, Gen AI for your work in general, and the companies you worked with. How do they use that?
That has been quite a journey. It has been very interesting to see how tools have evolved over the last year, especially. And we knew that when we started working with AI tools, like in January 2025, we knew that things were gonna evolve, but we didn't expect evolution to happen so fast. We have seen, especially with Claude, the new models that they have deployed, we have seen incredible progress there, and it has surprised us for in a positive way, for good, for supporting our outcomes, to the point that we are now using Claude, for example, to create decision trees that we then convert into scenarios, immersive scenarios that we develop with AI tools. So GenAI has been a great partner to us because with a good prompt, and I must confess that we have taken some courses on prompt engineering because that's important for us to understand how the machine understands the input that you give it. And then once you have a successful structure, an architecture of your prompt, it's very easy for Claude to understand it or for any GenAI tool. And there was a time, I'm going to make a parenthesis here to share a personal experience. I was struggling with Claude following my specific prompt. So I took my prompt on a separate conversation in Claude, and I told it, Claude, this is the prompt that I want to give you. Give me recommendations on how to better structure it for you to better understand it. And it gave me a very clear structure with different organizations or groups in my prompt. And the output was incredibly better now that I used that structure. And we also took some courses I mentioned and all of that. But once you understand how the tool works, you can give it a very well structured and very strategic prompt for the tool to create exactly what you're expecting it to create. And we have been surprised with the new models, with the new the new models that Claude has launched, that it gives us a very clear structure on the decision trees. And this structure responds to the prompt that we're giving it. So it's not Claude defining what we want to put in the course. It's us imagining what we want the student to go through. We said we want a student to go through an immersive scenario where they have to make decisions, where they have implications of the decisions they make. They see the consequences. So we put that into a prompt, and then we give it to Claude, and Claude gives us a structure that honestly it would take us probably weeks writing those structures or those decision trees with a human, because they are so connected, so the dependencies are so tight that it's very difficult doing it from a human side. So Claude does that in seconds, couple of minutes at most. And then we take that and then we produce it, and the outcome is incredible. So that's one of the most unexpected uses we have seen with GenAI tools. And about the second question and how we stop ourselves from over relying on AI, I think that it's very important to always have present what you want to accomplish and what your goal is. As long as your strategy is very well crafted and very well defined, and everybody is aligned with that strategy, if everybody has the same vision, then you're not gonna over rely on AI. If there's no vision and that vision is not shared among the different team members, someone's gonna over rely on AI, because it's very easy to start doing what AI tells you that you must do. And it's funny how the new models, especially ChatGPT, I find it like desperating that it always gives you a question at the end of the conversation to go through a different branch in the main conversation that you're having. And you're like, no, 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 wait, I'm not going here. I'm going in this line. So don't take me there. So if you just follow AI guidance, you're gonna get lost. You gotta have a strategy, a vision, and communicate that vision and make sure that everybody has that same shared vision in the organization. Those principles are incredibly important for this to work.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds incredible. And just circling back to the scenario-based learning that you've mentioned, biggest fan. And I see that like on our side at Panopto at Elai, we see that the most progressive companies are investing a lot of time into exploring scenario-based learning. And here I have just one example to share, which is kind of a silly one, but yet I'm going to share it of my much younger colleague. He was new to the profession, and once he told me a story that, look, I'm a big fan of PlayStation games. And there was one where there was 150 endings based on my choices. I didn't know how it's going to end. I could feel the real consequences. And I think we are coming. And so he mentioned that in relation to the course that he received on informational security, I think was that, or compliance. And it was a torture for him to go through this, 20-year-old designs, very straightforward, very clickable experience, nothing interesting, nothing engaging. So he mentioned that why can't learning be interesting? It's a very simple question, and it's directly connected to the learner outcomes, even though engagement is hard to measure. It's difficult to connect engagement with the behavioral change, but still it's a very important aspect of learning. If you're not engaged, you're not interested, you probably are not going to remember. So knowledge retention is lost in this aspect. And using all the tools that you just mentioned, Claude for diverse scenario branches, you connect it with the videos, you connect it with different formats. That creates an ecosystem of learning which is not just interesting or entertaining. I hate the word edutainment. That's not what we are aiming for here, but it still connects us, brings us a bit closer to our end goal, to make sure that learning is memorable and meaningful. At the end of the day, you are achieving the goal of, be that as it may, what's important for your business. Is it better customer experience? Is it improvement in marketing sales aspect? What is your ultimate goal? How can we bring our audience closer to this goal through learning? Learning experience is something that is expected right now, thanks to all of the advancements of technology. People expect better, right? And we will talk about generated content a bit more. But for now, a couple of words on the design principles. So we've talked to hundreds of L&D experts, and there is a very clear pattern that all successful leaders tend to keep when it comes to designing effective learning around AI. And 4 principles are here. These are use cases. We are talking about making prompting a skill and not a lecture. And I love the example Manuel has mentioned previously. Talk to Claude. Help me improve my prompt. How can I understand you better? We work as a teammates here, right? Next is safety to experiment. Again, Manuel covered it a little bit. It's okay to fail. It's okay to learn on mistakes, right? And lastly, of course, is the behavioral change. At the end of the day, it's not enough to just watch video. It's not enough to just interact with the content. What does it bring us closer to our goal? And common pitfalls that we've seen, one and done training. Everything changes so fast. Tool that I used a month ago is not the same today. Updating content becomes a hassle. And we will talk about it a little bit later. Now you can work around that. So next, of course, the management support. Again, Manuel talked about that, so I'm not going to stop on this topic. Low adopters. There is a very interesting statistics that only 88% of employees, use AI for very basic tasks, and only 5 are maximizing it. So low adopters need the most intentional design. And lastly, of course, is generic content and no executive modeling. So Manuel, is there anything that needs to be said in this aspect before we proceed to our final topic?
I think data speaks for themselves, and it's important to see and to assess where we are standing in our organizations among this data. Like, are we part of the low adopters? Are we part of the champions who are adopting AI? Where are we? It's important to have like a benchmark of where are we standing right now, and moreover, where do we want to go? Where do we need to go? And always think strategically when you get there, because it's very easy to work from or to start working from a tools perspective. If you want to define what you gotta do by exploring what tools are available, you're gonna get lost, because there are tools for virtually everything right now. You can find tools for a lot of things, in terms of or within the learning and development industry, right, or context. So as Sina mentioned before, it needs to be an ecosystem of tools. You're not gonna find the silver bullet, that the one tool that is gonna help you with everything. No, every tool has its own limitations. So you can identify which are the tools that are gonna help you accomplish your results. But you gotta start by identifying what you need to accomplish from a strategic perspective. Where does your organization need to go? And once you define that, define how you're gonna accomplish it. And the tools are just gonna be the enablers of that tactical approach. So it's the strategic tactics, and then the operational stuff. That's where AI comes into play. So if you really want to develop a solid ecosystem of tools that help you adopt AI or accomplish your goals, you gotta start with the strategic aspect of it. I cannot emphasize that enough.
I love that. So moving a bit closer to the topic of generated content, we've got 2 questions here. First of all, how do you keep the program accurate? Because as mentioned, tool that I use today was not the same tool a month ago, right? And second, moving beyond the static experiences, clickable experiences, very straightforward learning where all the employee has to do is click, I understand, or answer a very simple quiz. So what is actually working in your experience, Manuel?
That is a very interesting approach, and this is where I mentioned earlier that I was going to talk about the mindset. When you adopt AI tools, you can understand something. The only thing that is going to be constant from now on is going to be change, and that's something that we have always been told, right? That change is the only thing that is constant. But now it's not only constant, but it's every time it's faster. Like the cycles of products that exist in the industry are shorter, every time shorter and shorter. Like the first model of ChatGPT probably was there for like 6 months, and then 3 months, and then 2 months. And I would not be surprised if a new model is being released every week in the future, because that's where software development is going. That's where tool providers are aiming for. They want to evolve constantly. So if you want to use a tool and maintain your process static using those tools like forever, or at least for 1 year, that is not the mindset that you're going to need, because there will always be new capabilities that you can embed into your workflow and new tools that you can leverage to get a better outcome in what you're doing, in the content that you're developing. So it's like budget and cycles. So a lot of organizations are moving away from yearly budget cycles to quarterly budget cycles, because they gotta redefine things they're doing and things they're buying every quarter, not every year. And we see some very agile organizations even working with monthly budgets, for example. So the same mindset needs to apply in content development, in R&D or learning and development, because you gotta be sure that things are gonna evolve every time faster and faster, and you gotta adapt to that evolution. So that mindset needs to be on the managers or the directors of the organization, but also on the people who are working with these tools. We even have, we encourage our designers to always keep an eye open on what tools are available for them to integrate into the workflow. The workflow needs to be flexible enough for people to be able to add new tools into that. But we even have one role in our organization at Global Links who is always looking for new tools and new ways of doing things. This role has become very critical for us because this is how we find opportunities in the market. It's very easy to get blind when you're operating in some way, and sometimes the opportunity is right in front of you, but you don't see it because you're focused on what you're doing here. So you got to keep an eye open and keep your mindset always open to adopt new things as they evolve. I think that's going to be the success of organizations that are adopting AI.
That's really interesting. And I'm pretty sure that our audience will have some questions during the Q&A session on this topic. We already had some of them. But before we dive very deep into the Q&A session, we've got an announcement on Elai's side of the things. So what we are building at Elai is where things get exciting for L&D teams. One challenge with AI video is that it feels robotic. Learners disengage. Authentic presence matters now more than ever. And that's why we've introduced new avatar for you. You can have a quick sample of the new avatars that we are introducing on our platform. Several types, such as dialogue avatars with side view presenters, create natural conversation between two AI presenters. You can easily build manager-employee discussions, coaching scenarios, or client interactions from the script. And these are ideal for role plays and soft skills training. Scenario avatars guide learners through realistic workplace situations, perfect for compliance, leadership development, and short learning moments in the flow of work. And behind it all are 500 plus new state-of-the-art avatars with expressive gestures and emotional range, helping you keep a consistent on-brand presenter across topics, languages, and formats. And this isn't just AI video anymore, it's an AI-powered instructional design. I know that when we talk about AI tools, it can feel abstract, but let me ground this in what clients are actually experiencing. So a couple of wonderful stats for you here on the slide. Yep, you got it. On the cost and speed side, Sigma Software reduced their video production costs by 60%. Think about what it actually means in practice. Content that would have taken weeks and the production budget can now be created in hours. by a single learning designer. Samples cut voiceover costs by more than 87%. And for teams producing content in multiple languages, that's a budget transformation, not just an efficiency gain. On engagement and scale side, Petroshow saw 90% growth in engagement from their AI video generated content. Not a small uptick, nearly doubling engagement. And Kazakh British Technical University achieved a 30% higher retention rate. In learning design, we know that retention is a whole game. And if people don't remember it, training didn't happen. These aren't edge cases. They are what happens when you combine good instructional design with AI-powered production tools. With that, we are bringing you to our resource page. And again, after our webinar, you're going to receive an email with the presentation and the video recording. So every link for research and some suggestions to take a closer look into, and these are going to be available for your usage after our event. Don't worry, you're not going to lose anything. Okay, so before we go into the Q&A session, Manuel, is there anything that you would want to add on the main topic, or this slide, maybe some extra recommendations, or we can dive in straight to the Q&A session?
I think that one final comment that is very important to consider as well when talking about the previous slide where you showed the metrics. As I shared before, we have accomplished a 500% increase in productivity, but we have seen that that is not enough for our market, because you also gotta consider that the market is consuming content differently to what it used to be before. So even though we have accomplished a good speed on creating content, we have seen that is not enough. We gotta add some variety on how we're presenting information. Because no matter how engaging and how beautiful and how professional some video content or content video, whatever you create is, people are gonna, you know, I always tell this to the team, we develop long courses, like 300-hour courses, like boot camps. And I always tell them, it doesn't matter how engaging and beautiful it looks, like after the 10th video, I'm already bored about it. So people are used now to changing things, all this social media that TikTok and Facebook, all the how do they call it, the infinite reel, right? Like you're playing one video after another. People want changes fast, and they get bored fast. So you got to consider that when you're creating content. And I think it's a risk for everybody, and we share that risk as well, falling into a specific format where you want to develop all your content in that format. You got to think of different ways to present the information to the learner to keep them engaged. And it depends also, because it's not the same developing a video for marketing or developing a full course or developing a scenario that is only like part of a practice. Again, it depends on the strategy that your organization has. But regardless of what content you're developing, I think that considering what the market needs and how the market wants to consume your information, that is going to be critical. And that's where the new avatars, for example, of course, add value to the tool, because you can present format or content in different formats. And instead of showing just the same and the same all over again, you can provide a variety of formats to the people, to the learners, that will keep them engaged. I think that is very, very important. So when you define your strategy in your organization, always take that into account. What is the experience, as Ina was mentioning? What is the experience that you want your learners to have? And then how you can create that experience using the different tools that are available.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that approach. And, the more technology evolves, the more we have to stay flexible. And I think this is what you are saying, Manuel. And it's obvious why your company is so progressive and successful is due to this approach. And just like you said, when it stays in the core of the organization, top-down approach, then you all move towards the progress. Right, with that, let's move into the Q&A session. We've got a couple of questions already, but we are giving everyone a minute or two to drop your question in the Q&A session here in Zoom. Also, the conversation doesn't end here. Please feel free to connect with us, with Manuel via LinkedIn, with me as well, and also learn more about Panopto and Elai. All right, so the question from David, thank you for being here, David. So do we need to use the LMS to create Elai avatars? No, you don't need. They can be integrated with your LMS afterwards, but it's not a necessity. It's up to you. Depends on the way you're distributing the content. All right, we have one more question. Okay, and this one, I think that we can do 100 webinars about AI, about GenAI, about content created with the help of AI, and this question will be always the top of the list. So when designing learning content with AI, how do you ensure the output still reflects human expertise and doesn't feel generic? I feel that a lot of times when we are interacting with AI generated content in the past, we felt that that's AI. I'm not going to listen to this. On my end, the more closer to reality, and right now you have technology that probably are not going to be able to say if that's AI generated content or not. And there has been really great research that says about the same thing, that the bigger the realism, the bigger the trust towards the content and how it's being perceived. But that's my thoughts. Manuel, what are your thoughts?
I think it goes beyond like ensuring the quality with a human or validating with human resources. I think that I mean we still have instructional designers in our team that tells us how people need to learn. And then when you develop the content, of course, there's human validation of it. But you get to think of how people really need to learn. And as Ina mentioned, I mean, you can immediately identify when something is generated with AI. And it's okay if you see a video or some resource that is something that is in your course that is generated with AI. I mean, you would have to be very naive to think that an avatar is a real person. That I think that 99.9% of the people would see or clearly identify it's an AI generated avatar. But that is not the problem. The problem is with content that is not really aligned with the industry needs. Something that we always do in the courses that we generate is we understand or we assess what are really the skills that people need to develop with that content? What is the outcome that you want to accomplish with that? Do you want people to learn something, to memorize something? Do you want people to develop the skill that is going to be relevant in the industry once they find a job, for example? And we start from there. And the content that we generate with AI, of course, there are humans involved in the workflow, as I mentioned, graphic designers, instructional designers as well, QA. But all the strategy of the content that we generate goes to the outcome that we want to accomplish. We want people to develop this skill. We want people to learn these principles. And if that remains at the core of your content development strategy, it's going to be successful regardless of the format that you give or that you use to create the information.
I love that. Great. Okay, we've got one more question. Giulietta. So Giulietta writes, I think it's very product focused. How can we make sure that the same avatar voice used in the avatar library is used when applying the avatar to a presentation? Currently, it doesn't seem to match, and I don't see the name of the voice attached to the avatar in avatar library. Giulietta, strongly recommending to address directly to us on Elai's side, because there is a button that says apply to all the slides. So you don't need to manually attach the voice. I might have misunderstood your question, but you've got your QR code. Feel free to reach out. Would be happy to provide the answer. All right. So with that, huge thank you to Manuel Garcia for such generous and honest insights today. Manuel, the specificity and the metrics you shared, I'm confident are exactly what our audience needed to hear today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for attending or watching this recorded. I really encourage you to don't be afraid of the tools. Play with them. They're going to really help you.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And thank you to all who joined us today and contributed to the conversation. Your engagement is what made this session really come alive. And we'll be sending a follow-up email with recording, resource list, and some additional materials from today's session. Keep an eye on your inbox. In the meantime, I'd encourage you to take one idea from today's session and try it this week. Whether you're using AI to pressure test your learning objectives, exploring Elai for your next content project, or simply having a different kind of AI conversation with your team. The gap between organizations winning with AI and those failing behind isn't about technology access. It's about intentional learning design. And that's exactly what everyone in this room is positioned to lead. Thank you so much again. Take care, and we'll see you in the next session.